Toga versus Curious. Welcome back to another My Hero Academia anime versus manga comparison video. Today we will be going over season 5 episode 109 of the My Hero Academia anime. As always, we will be seeing what was changed or how much was changed, removed, or perhaps done better from the manga to anime adaptation. Now, episode 109 is titled Revival Party, which is the same title as chapter 224. To start things off, episode 109 opens with a flashback to the advent of the extraordinary, Deku narrating, talking about the ideology that brought about the Meta Liberation Army, and a flashback to when Redestro had a meeting with the other members of the MLA that took place during Shoto and Bakugo's provisional license course. Here, the anime adds in a ton of new scenes when Deku is narrating about the advent of the extraordinary and Destro, showing more of the chaos that society was going through during that time period when quirks first started manifesting in humans. Honestly, this is probably some of my favorite additions in the anime, just because in chapter 218, where the Redestro flashback and Deku narration is taken from, we never really got to see these past events where metahumans are protesting for their rights to use their powers, or Destro standing in a crowd of metahumans preaching about liberation and not being suppressed in the manga. So it's really nice to actually see these moments that Deku is narrating about in the anime. Besides that, in this beginning section of the episode, the anime does cut out a lot of other stuff as well, such as a small bit of dialogue between Redestro and Hanabata, as well as the last bit of the meeting where Curious asks Redestro about him expanding into the hero industry, which for those that might have forgotten, Redestro is the CEO and president of Detnarat, the company that had just entered into the hero support industry at the time. With that said, a huge thing that I've come to realize is that since the anime adapted these 2+ pages from chapter 218, going over that whole flashback, plus the short amount of episodes left in the season, it seems that the anime won't be adapting the actual introduction to Redestro as well as the Detnarat commercial that were a part of chapter 218, which is really disappointing because his interaction with Miyashita and the commercial were vital to understanding Redestro's character and making him feel like a huge threat. It also expanded on the world building when it came to quirks and what happened during the advent of the extraordinary through the Detnarat commercial, like how hard it was for a lot of people at the time who had these different body types due to their quirks to find products to fit their daily needs. I think not having Redestro being properly introduced in the anime like he was in the manga at the beginning of the My Villain Academia arc was a big mistake, because removing all of that buildup really does make Redestro feel like some random dude who just wanted to pick a fight with the League. After the opening, when the League are looking over Daikai City, the anime removes a lot of detail in the city's landscape. The anime also adds in Mr. Compress looking at his pocket watch when he is talking about the time it will take until Machia wakes up. Mr. Compress also gets some added dialogue with him saying the so-called Liberation Army has a force of 110,000 here, as well as a bit of dialogue that was removed with him saying "I dare say" after saying "but can we really last that long?" When Twice gets mad at Dabi about being annoyed that he got dragged into this fight, the anime doesn't adapt Twice trying to hit Dabi with his measuring tape. After this, when the League is being escorted into the city by the hero Slide and Go, the anime removes some of Hanabata's dialogue saying that this isn't my usual turf, but today's a big exception. When the League is talking about who Hanabata is, originally in the manga when the League were discussing who he is, they were already being attacked by the MLA. The anime also removes Mr. Compress saying that Hanabata himself could easily have about 110,000 followers. When the League is being attacked, the anime doesn't adapt the manga panels showing the various security cameras that are recording this event. Switching over to Redestro, before Giran starts talking about being the damsel in distress, the anime removes a scene showing that there are officers and heroes who are a part of the MLA preventing civilians on the outside from entering into the city. The anime also removes a bunch of Redestro's dialogue where he says that Daikai City and its location is the perfect sort of town for the MLA to lie low in. For some detail removed, when Redestro is going on about how the League of Villains is nothing but a club without the Nomus, the anime doesn't adapt this cool manga panel showing Redestro in the sky looking down on the battle below. Instead, the anime just sort of separates this panel into two scenes. The first showing Redestro in his tower looking down at the battle in the city, and the second showing the battle itself. After this, the anime doesn't adapt the panel showing the MLA warriors communicating with each other. When Curious is talking about how the Liberation Warriors all train their bodies and minds in order to live better lives, the anime adds in 3 still frames showing Mr. Compress, Dabi, and Twice in the middle of some random battles. For some more detail removed, when we see Toga standing in the street surrounded by Liberation Warriors, in the manga, the background had a lot more going on, almost as if there was a big fight happening than in the anime. Moving on, as Curious is talking about how she was excited about interviewing Toga, the anime adds in a scene showing the article about Toga that she was going to write about. When Toga disappears in the anime, the Liberation Warriors all just stand there looking around, while in the manga, the Liberation Warriors are actually moving and running towards Curious. For some details removed, changed, and added in, when Toga gets hit by the warriors in the air, the anime removes this 4-legged guy kicking her in the air. This person actually fired blasts out of their arms in the manga and not out of their mouth like in the anime, and the anime adds in this guy shooting this green electricity at Toga. The anime also removes this Liberation Warriors line of dialogue to Toga. After this, when Toga is in the restaurant and she throws all of her syringes at the warriors to suck their blood, the anime removes Toga saying suck when the syringes all stab the warriors, and her saying, now my on the go suck suck mask, when she puts on her mask. Also, quick side note, someone is definitely getting fired at Bones for not drawing in the tube for this one syringe. Honestly, I don't know how something like that can go unmissed. Moving on, after the blood that Toga sucks out explodes, everything up until Toga flying back onto the street is changed in one way or another. First, the anime makes it so that the warriors in the restaurant all end up dying from Curious's explosions, which in the manga, that doesn't happen at all. Yes, they do get turned into bombs, but they never actually die. One of the chefs in the restaurant actually sends Toga flying by an explosion back onto the street. The next change in this scene is the removal of most of Curious's dialogue from after the restaurant warriors blow up, right up until she starts to do the actual interview going over Toga's background. Another big change is the addition of Toga being in the alleyway and is just getting brutally blown up by the landmine traps set by Curious. This was definitely a great addition into the anime. The last change in this scene is that the anime doesn't adapt Toga looking at the other warriors running to surround her when she gets blown back onto the street. Another big detail removed in the anime, which applies to the rest of the episode, is that there isn't a lot of blood that is actually shown. A lot of it did get censored out, but I'm actually still pretty glad that it wasn't completely cut from the anime. And yes, it did get pretty bloody sometimes in the anime, but the manga was a lot more bloodier. So I do still prefer the manga when it comes to the blood. When we see the flashback of the news covering Toga murdering the boy Saito, who looked a lot like Deku, the anime doesn't adapt the panel where someone in their interview says that Saito was popular with the other children at the school. The news in the anime also doesn't bleep out Toga's name like in the manga. After this, when Toga's parents call her a demon child, the anime adds in an extra cool scene showing a close-up of the dead bird in a young Toga's hands with blood that ends up covering the whole screen. When Curious walks up to Toga to hold her head because Toga had just collapsed on the floor, the anime removes so much of Curious's dialogue that goes over quirk counseling, and how instead of helping people like Toga to better fit into society, it has the opposite effect and makes them feel isolated due to their quirks having a certain effect on them, like how Toga's quirk makes her have a strong fascination with blood. It's honestly super disappointing that this didn't make it into the anime, because now Toga's development, as well as the rest of the leagues, feels a lot less impactful in how society has truly let down these people that we call all villains. After this, when we see the flashback showing Toga as a child, the anime changes the view and now shows baby Toga from the back instead of the front at the start of the flashback. The anime also adds in Toga's mom smacking the bird out of baby Toga's hand, which I don't know why, but I found this little scene to be a little funny just because damn, that poor bird could not catch a break. As Toga tries to stab Curious, when Curious takes out her support item, the anime adds in a little scene of Curious using the Curious Flattener to block Toga's attack before setting off an explosion on Toga's face. After this, the anime doesn't adapt this panel showing the other articles that Curious was going to write about Toga's life. When Toga gets away from Curious and tries to run away, the anime doesn't adapt Curious doing the MLA symbol. For some more details removed, when Toga drinks the rest of Ochako's leftover blood, the anime doesn't adapt Toga actually transforming into Ochako. Instead, the transformation happens behind a lot of smoke. When Curious is mocking Toga about her final moments, the anime removes the Curious Flattener being around her hand. After this, when Toga undergoes her quirk evolution and uses Ochako's quirk to make Curious float into the sky, the anime removes Curious saying "what?" as well as the other Liberation Warriors yelling out to Curious when they see that she is floating up into the sky. When Toga is about to undo zero gravity, the anime removes Toga's thoughts where she says that she saw Ochako's quirk in action, so she knows how to use it. After this, for Curious's death, the anime changes the angles so that it doesn't show them all hitting the ground on impact. Also, the bodies all fall behind Toga in the anime. In the manga, we see the gruesome display of all of the bodies all hitting the ground and Toga looking at them, which I definitely prefer the manga version of Curious's death. Switching over to Dabi, Spinner, and Twice, the anime doesn't adapt Spinner asking Mr. Compress how much longer until Machia wakes up. Switching back to Toga, the anime doesn't adapt her walking to find the shed to rest in. Instead, when we go back and see her, she is already inside of the shed that she passes out in. Now, before switching over to Shigaraki, the anime doesn't adapt these 5 pages from chapter 227 going over Toga's thoughts as she is laying on the floor of the shed and how she feels even closer to those she loves, and the section going over Hanabata and him hyping up the Liberation Warriors to attack Shigaraki over Curious's death, as well as a bunch of panels going over pieces of Shigaraki's origin story when he is feeling super sleepy. And before I forget to mention this, the anime also doesn't adapt the scenes showing Skeptic, Redestro, and Girin in the tower, talking about Toga after Curious's death. Now, finally switching over to Shigaraki being sleepy, when he is recalling some of his origin story, the anime blacks out the top half of this girl's face. When Shigaraki decays the whole mob of Liberation Warriors, the anime doesn't show Shigaraki's hand ripping and decaying through this guy's head, which is disappointing to say the least, because to me, that would have been such a cool visual to see in the anime. Switching over to the boy Dabi, when Dabi is talking about him not being good at not killing people, the anime doesn't show the silhouette of Geten coming down from the sky, as well as Dabi getting his fire ready to kill some Liberation Warriors. When Geten calls Dabi out on possibly having an issue with his quirk, the anime doesn't adapt Dabi getting a little bit ticked off when he says that. Also, can I just take the time to appreciate Bones making Geten's ice dragon look so good when it was being formed? The animation here when it attacks Dabi and Dabi attacking back with his flames looked so great in my opinion. After this very hype moment, the anime doesn't adapt the panel showing some of the Liberation Warriors getting pushed back by Dabi's flames and Geten's ice dragon clashing into each other. And finally, for the final change in the anime, switching over to Twice finding Toga passed out in the shed, the anime removes a scene showing what looks to be warriors grieving over Curious's death. Episode 109 then ends with Twice being confronted with his greatest fear, that being himself, and Skeptic declaring that he will recruit Twice into the Meta Liberation Army. Now, episode 109 adapts about 6 chapters, them being 2+ pages from chapter 218, the rest of chapter 224, chapters 225, 226, 8 pages from chapter 227, 227 and chapter 228. Now, personally for me, I wasn't the biggest fan of how certain scenes in the anime were just a bunch of still frames, plus without sounding like a broken record, I really don't like how the anime is sort of rushing through all of this amazing content and just not adapting or just saving certain scenes for later. Other than that, I did enjoy the Curious versus Toga fight for what it was, and I was still able to get hyped for when she got her quirk awakening and seeing Geten's ice dragon, which was done very well in the anime. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on the changes made in episode 109. Which removal were you the most disappointed in? Let me know everything in the comment section below. With that said, thank you for watching another My Hero Academia anime versus manga comparison video. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to Detroit smash that like button below, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. If you are new to the channel and you want to see more My Hero Academia content, then be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on to join the Kitoroki Hero Academia to become my hero. Doing all of this really does help the channel out a lot, and it's always appreciated. Remember to stay plus ultra, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.